A red hat, a high-end restaurant, a moment that stops the world. When pride and prejudice collide, a shocking encounter ignites a chain of events that will challenge loyalties, expose hidden truths, and redefine forgiveness. In the face of division, can one bold gesture spark a path to unity? The warm glow of chandeliers bathed the high-end New York restaurant in an inviting light, harmonized by soft classical music and the murmur of conversations. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, balancing trays of expensive wines and delicate dishes. The evening exuded sophistication until the door swung open. In walked Barron Trump, now 20 years old, dressed in a tailored navy blazer and a crisp white shirt, his unmistakable red MAGA hat sitting prominently on his head. The room seemed to pause, forks halting mid-air, eyes darting toward him like a sudden ripple in calm water. Unfazed, Barron strode confidently to the maitre d', his tall frame and composed demeanor cutting through the tension. At the corner of the room, Victor, the restaurant manager, froze, his sharp eyes fixated on the hat, a symbol that had sparked countless debates and divided countless rooms. Taking a deep breath, he adjusted his tie and made his way toward Barron with forced composure. "Good evening, sir," Victor said, his voice smooth but strained. "I'm afraid our establishment has a strict dress code and, well..." He gestured vaguely toward Barron's hat. Barron's face remained calm, almost unreadable. "The hat stays," he said evenly, his tone polite yet resolute. Victor's smile faltered. "I understand, but perhaps you'd reconsider." "No," Barron interrupted softly, his eyes locking onto Victor's with a quiet intensity. "It's a personal choice." A hush swept through the restaurant as heads turned fully toward the escalating scene. Whispers buzzed like static electricity. "Is that who I think it is? What's going on?" Victor's frustration boiled over. "I'm sorry, but I must insist. If you can't comply with our policy, I'll have to ask you to leave." For a moment, Barron said nothing. Then, with a faint smile that was both disarming and unnerving, he nodded. "Of course." The room collectively exhaled as Barron turned and walked toward the door. Just as he reached the threshold, he paused, looking back at Victor, not with anger but with a calm expression that hinted at something deeper, something quietly calculating. As the door closed behind him, a diner near the entrance leaned toward Victor and whispered, "Do you have any idea who that was?" Victor scoffed, but unease flickered across his face. His confidence wavered as the realization began to settle like a weight in the pit of his stomach. The diners murmured, their curiosity palpable. Outside, Barron stood on the sidewalk, the night air cool against his face. He pulled out his phone, made a quick call, and uttered just 2 words. "It's done." The screen faded to black on the scene, leaving Victor and the restaurant shrouded in suspense, the audience wondering what was about to unfold. The sound of the restaurant door clicking shut seemed to linger in Victor's ears. But the silence didn't last long. The moment Barron stepped outside, a handful of patrons pulled out their phones. Within hours, blurry but damning videos of the confrontation were splashed across social media. By morning, MAGA incident was trending. Clips of Barron's calm demeanor juxtaposed with Victor's escalating tone divided the internet. Some called Victor a hero, standing firm against a controversial symbol. Others labeled him intolerant, arguing that personal beliefs shouldn't dictate access to public spaces. The restaurant's Yelp and Google reviews were flooded with 1-star ratings. "Disgraceful behavior," one review read, "You've lost my business forever." Protesters gathered outside, some holding signs that read, "Freedom to choose," while others chanted, "Hate has no place here." The once pristine image of Victor's upscale restaurant crumbled before his eyes. Victor spent the next few days holed up in his office, his phone buzzing non-stop. Calls from the media, angry voicemails from former patrons, and increasingly panicked messages from the restaurant's owner, all blurred into one suffocating noise. "Victor," his assistant said cautiously one afternoon, peeking her head into his office. "We need to say something, anything." Victor looked up, his face lined with stress. He knew she was right, but his pride held him back. "I didn't do anything wrong," he muttered, though the words felt hollow even to him. Meanwhile, Barron remained silent. No interviews, no statements, no social media posts. His absence only stoked the fire, turning him into an enigma. The lack of response made Victor's actions stand out even more. Exactly 1 week after the incident, as Victor sipped his third cup of coffee that morning, a courier arrived at the restaurant with an envelope. "For Mr. Victor Lang," the man said, placing it on the counter and walking away. Victor opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single piece of paper bearing Barron's signature. "Dear Mr. Lang, let's resolve this face-to-face. I believe in addressing things directly, not through the noise of the media. Someone will pick you up tomorrow at 7 p.m. Sincerely, Barron Trump." Victor stared at the letter, his heartbeat quickening. The message was cordial, surprisingly so, but its vagueness unsettled him. It didn't specify a location nor what Barron wanted. "Are you going?" his assistant asked, her voice laced with both curiosity and concern. Victor didn't answer. His mind swirled with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. What did Barron want? A confrontation? An apology? Retribution? The next evening, as the clock ticked closer to 7 p.m., Victor sat in his office, staring at the letter. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your ride is waiting outside." Victor exhaled shakily, grabbed his coat, and stepped into the night. A sleek black car idled at the curb, its tinted windows hiding whoever waited inside. As Victor approached, the driver stepped out and opened the back door. "Mr. Lang," the man said with a nod, "please, get in." Victor hesitated, his mind racing with doubt, but curiosity and a sense of obligation compelled him to take the first step. As the door closed behind him, the car pulled away, leaving the audience and Victor in suspense, wondering where he was being taken and what awaited him next. The black car moved swiftly through the city streets, its tinted windows blurring the outside world. Inside, Victor sat stiffly, the blindfold resting awkwardly over his eyes. "Is this really necessary?" he asked, his voice edged with unease. "It's part of the arrangement, sir," the driver replied coolly. Victor felt the car slow, then turn sharply. The tires crunched over gravel before coming to a smooth stop. A moment later, the door opened and a firm hand guided him out. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and a faint hint of something floral, jasmine maybe. The blindfold was removed and Victor blinked against the sight before him. A sprawling mansion loomed in the distance, its towering glass windows glowing warmly against the evening sky. It was both beautiful and intimidating, a stark contrast to the chaos of the past week. "Right this way," the driver said, leading Victor up the steps and through double doors that opened into an opulent foyer. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, and the air buzzed with an eerie stillness. "Mr. Lang." Victor turned toward the voice. At the end of a long corridor stood Barron, dressed impeccably in a dark suit, his expression calm yet unreadable. His presence was magnetic, commanding attention without a word. Victor hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. "Mr. Trump," he finally said, his voice steady but cautious. Barron gestured for him to follow. They walked silently through a series of lavishly decorated rooms until they reached a private dining area. A table was set for two, lit by soft candlelight. "Sit," Barron said, his tone polite yet firm. Victor obeyed, his nerves fraying under the weight of the moment. The silence stretched as a server poured wine and brought out the first course. Barron finally broke the tension. his voice measured. Do you know what it's like to have your name define you before you even have a chance to define yourself? Victor glanced up, startled. Barron continued without waiting for an answer. When I was a kid, people didn't see me. They saw my father's shadow. Every move I made, every word I spoke. It was dissected, criticized, weaponized. That hat. Barron's gaze lingered on Victor. Isn't about politics for me. It's a reminder to stand tall, no matter how many people try to push you down. Victor shifted uncomfortably. You wore it knowing it would provoke people. Did I? Barron's lips curled into a faint smile. Or did you decide it would provoke you? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Barron leaned back, his eyes scanning Victor. Tell me, Mr. Lang, why were you so angry? Was it really about me? Victor's chest tightened. The room seemed smaller now, the air thicker. He paused, struggling to find the words. I've lost people, family, friends. Politics turned them into strangers. That hat, your hat, it felt like... He trailed off, swallowing hard. It felt like a reminder of what you lost. Barron finished softly. Victor nodded, his eyes glistening. I've been trying to hold this restaurant together, to keep something in my life stable. When you walked in, his voice broke, and he buried his face in his hands. Barron waited, giving Victor the space to unravel. When he finally spoke, his tone was gentle but firm. You and I aren't so different, Mr. Lang. We're both trying to make sense of a world that's split in two, but letting anger dictate your actions. He shook his head. It only widens the divide. Victor exhaled shakily, looking up at Barron. Why are you doing this? Why bring me here? Barron's calm demeanor shifted slightly, a flicker of intensity in his eyes. This isn't just about us. It's about what comes next. Victor frowned. What do you mean? Barron stood, adjusting his suit jacket. You'll see soon enough. Before Victor could press further, Barron's expression softened. But tonight is about understanding. Let's leave the future for tomorrow. As the conversation lingered on unresolved questions, Victor felt the weight of something larger brewing, something he couldn't yet grasp. The suspense was palpable, the air charged with possibilities. The night wasn't over, and neither was Barron's plan. 3 days passed in a blur of unease. Victor replayed the meeting with Barron over and over, trying to decipher the cryptic hints about what would come next. The restaurant was quieter than usual, with customers trickling in cautiously, as if wary of becoming part of the spectacle. Then an envelope arrived at the restaurant. Victor recognized the same courier who had delivered Barron's invitation. Inside was a legal document bearing an official seal. Confused, Victor skimmed through it and froze. The restaurant had been sold. It took a moment for the shock to settle before Victor noticed the name listed under new owner. His breath hitched. It was his brother, Daniel Lang, a name he hadn't spoken in years. Victor's hands trembled as memories rushed back. Heated arguments over dinner tables, cold, unreturned calls. The fallout had been brutal, leaving both men bitter and estranged. Now, Barron had brought Daniel back into his life in the most unexpected way. A handwritten note accompanied the document. Victor, sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones worth having. Rebuilding isn't easy, but neither is letting go. Your brother deserves a chance, and so do you. Barron. Victor sank into his chair, his mind spinning. Why would Barron do this? The realization hit him like a tidal wave. It wasn't about revenge or even redemption. It was about forcing Victor to confront the very walls he'd built around himself. The following day, Barron broke his silence with a video posted to social media. Sitting against a simple backdrop, his tone was earnest and unguarded. The past week has been a lesson for me, as I hope it has been for others. Barron began. "We live in a world that thrives on division, but we don't have to play into it. We can choose to see beyond the surface, to ask questions instead of making assumptions." He spoke without mentioning Victor by name, refraining from casting blame. Instead, his words centered on understanding and reconciliation. "Hatred and fear only grow when we feed them," Barron said, his voice steady. "But so does compassion. We need more of that, now more than ever." The media erupted, but not in the way Victor expected. Barron's refusal to escalate the incident caught everyone off guard. The narrative shifted from scandal to a call for dialogue, leaving Victor to grapple with the implications of Barron's generosity. Victor sat in his apartment that evening, staring at his phone. The number for his brother blinked back at him, a silent challenge. His thumb hovered over the call button for what felt like an eternity before he finally pressed it. "Hello?" Daniel's voice was cautious, unfamiliar after years of silence. "It's me," Victor said quietly. "We need to talk." What followed wasn't easy. There were tears, accusations, and long pauses, but it was a start. For the first time in years, they were talking, and that was enough for now. A week later, the restaurant reopened under Daniel's management. The atmosphere was different, warmer, more welcoming. Near the entrance, a new plaque had been installed, inscribed with the words, "A place for everyone." Victor walked in one last time, his steps slow and deliberate. On a table near the center of the room sat a single red MAGA hat. Beside it was a note, penned in Barron's unmistakable hand. "Change begins here." Victor stared at the hat for a long moment, his emotions swirling: anger, gratitude, regret, hope. He picked it up, feeling its weight, not just as a symbol, but as a challenge. Was this the end of the story, or the beginning of something new? He didn't have the answer yet, but as he walked out the door, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to find out.